I think one of the things that strikes me about your kind of the stories that you've shared is the adaptability. So, whenever which I think is a signature of a lot of great leaders, that, when you hit different moments, you find your ways around it, or you find your ways through it without too much drama, because that's the only way to be able to make progress in a way. Moving on, I wanted to ask you about how that's informed your personal philosophy as a leader. And now you've talked, I know from what I've read and from this conversation, people are really important to you. And John Lewis is entirely made up of the people. So I'm interested to know what kind of philosophy you've taken into the senior roles that you have, and the latest one.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I was wondering whether, I don't think I've ever used the word philosophy. So it's quite interesting. You've got me thinking. I have definitely, as I was talking before, the thing that really matters for me personally is a real sort of alignment with what I'm interested in, my values, and who I'm working with, and the organisation. And I know lots, and I'm sure that's the same for, but it's a sort of, it's almost an extreme thing with me that I can't, it's one of the reasons why sort of the profit motive is just not, I just find it completely sort of uninteresting. And so I would say the thing I've taken into the partnership, again, enormous business, very different from what I've done before, is the fact that I really believe in the model. And that's not to say that the model, that there's not scope for modernisation and a conversation, debate about how that applies in retail in the market that we're in today. But I fundamentally believe in that there's a different form of capitalism, or there can be a different form of capitalism that still allows a thriving, healthy business that puts people first. And I have felt it very important, and it has turned out to be very important, that the partners in the partnership hopefully can kind of connect with my values, and I connect with them, because we invest in people. We're not the most necessarily sort of high tech, company. We haven't got high gadgetry. What we have is people who partners who own the business. I'm the chief trustee of the partnership. I'm the guardian, the parent, to ensure that we still have a partnership of whatever form, shape, which sectors, in 100 years' time, having still, despite the odds here, for 100 years, since 1929, the first settlement of the partnership. So if it's a philosophy, I don't have a philosophy, I don't have a manifesto, I don't have a charter, but that sense of leaders who've got a sort of personal and genuine, real connection to the philosophy of the business. I couldn't run Next. I couldn't run M&S. I'd be completely unqualified, but I'm not interested. I'm not in the partnership because we sell amazing food, which we do, or that we sell amazing quality, high sustainably sourced products. We do, and I love the fact that we do. But the brands we have stem from the model we have, and stem from a model of co-ownership. And so the interesting question for me and for the partnership is, how do we take the sort of benefits of the ownership model that also has overhead and cost, and take that into how we modernise and now in a cost of living crisis after the pandemic, find a way to survive and hopefully be even more commercially successful.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you another question, which is, it's not about philosophy, but it is, so when I was growing up, and you must have had the same thing, there weren't that many female role models around, and there certainly weren't that many that I could relate to, because at the time, when I was becoming politically aware and all those things, you had Margaret Thatcher at one end of the spectrum, and then someone I admired very much at the time, Anita Roddick of The Body Shop, at the other. So there's quite a polarized and kind of spectrum. What's enabled you to become the person you are, who seems like someone who's very grounded, comfortable with who they are, and comfortable being who they are, rather than trying to take on a mask or become what was the norm for us, I would say, growing up, which was something that was much harder, much more suited and booted, and more direct, had a particular leadership style, which obviously has softened enormously over the years, but it's what we grew up with. So tell me, how did you develop your style?
Gosh, I think there is something about being my upbringing when I was never the majority, which actually makes you paradoxically quite comfortable in being the minority and quite comfortable in being a bit different. So I'm different also because I'm very introverted. So I'm a leader who really likes to listen and really likes to reflect. Which interestingly is very close to the culture of the Treasury. The Treasury is full of sort of introverted, sort of quasi-academic. It's a very sort of introverted culture, which actually suited me hugely. So except for one job, which I'll talk a little bit about, but I've just never had to have the baggage of sort of being somebody else, because I was never going to be somebody else. I was never going to be the sort of I was never going to be the norm. And so I don't know whether I'd ever really at the time consciously thought about it in a very sort of explicit way, but I've got very relaxed even when I was even when I was a very small child at school, when I was sort of unusually kind of academic. I was always just kind of got quite comfortable with it, and indeed I now am quite uncomfortable when I'm part of the majority, if that makes sense, because it's just not been my experience. I think the one time there was a role I did when I was just coming out of the civil service, and it was more of a public facing role. Because the great joy of being a civil servant is that you've got ministers who are much more public, and your job is to serve the government for the day of whatever political persuasion. And the first role I did, which was a bit more in the public eye, I remember going, it was like week 2 or something, and the team there, obviously very kind of worried, and had got sort of induction sorted out for me, and part of the induction was some media training, and which was done by somebody who was formerly at the BBC, and they in addition to the sort of how do you now need to have impact speaking type stuff, was also how do you need to dress. And she had brought along a sort of lookbook, which was literally the sort of role model was Kate Middleton and an LK Bennett dresses, I think. And I remember even at the time thinking this is sort of slightly odd, but maybe if I'm going on TV, I need to start buying block dresses. And I remember I sort of had a year of buying an entirely new wardrobe for work. And I got to the end of the year, and I remember it was one Christmas thinking something's really odd. I just don't feel like myself. And I was sort of literally dressing for somebody else. And I think I was watching Newsnight or something, and I remember seeing Kirsty Walk wearing, actually not dissimilar from what, she had a black jumper and she had a leopard print skirt. She just looked herself in some boots. And I then sort of took my wardrobe and put it in a large, bag, and took it to Oxfam in North London where I lived. And it was a really sort of interesting moment for me, because I thought this is the first time I had thought that not quite who I wasn't good enough, but how I was, that somehow I needed to present myself in a different way. And, literally physically present myself in a different way. And then I, started doing what I normally do, which is basically wearing jumpsuits and trainers into the office. And it was just, as I say, it caused a lot of reflection as to why I felt that I didn't have the confidence at the outset just to be myself, dress for my day, dress as myself. So it took, it was, as I say, it was a sort of weird, I look back now, I think it was a slightly sort of weird year.
But a good lesson in reasserting your own identity and being able to then, I always think kind of being able to dress in a way that's comfortable for you and behave in a way that's comfortable just makes you do your work better, doesn't it?
It's also a message to other, because how you are, I'm sure it's the same in your world, how you are, how you, all those things, those signals, just they have such a sort of they have such broader ripple effects through the business. And I remember just, literally people started wearing training shoes, kind of almost, a chain I was wearing on the Monday, and literally almost on the Tuesday, you could feel the organization just relax.
Yeah. That's great. I know we haven't got much time. I was going to ask you, looking back on the experiences that you've had, what kind of advice you might give others who are contemplating their journeys?
Girls, I always think, don't, be very careful about taking advice from old people at the end of their career. I mean, I guess because I didn't have a career plan, I still don't feel I have a career plan. I still feel, who knows what's going to sort of, always embracing life and opportunities. I think I always feel it's very important to have fun. So who you work with, what you're doing, it could be the hardest puzzle. How do you lead a retailer in a cost of living crunch? But having fun and being with colleagues, partners, wherever you are, but you've got a sense of humor and you're pointing in the right direction. I think, I don't know, anybody sort of listening to this conversation, particularly if you're a younger person, you're going to be working till you're sort of 75 and 80. So have fun. Don't worry if things don't work out the first time. It's a long life. And I would also say never take a role, never take a job because you think it's the right thing to do, but you have some personal reservations about, you'll hate it. You'll hate it and you'll be bad at it. So doing and trying that you think will be enormous fun, stretch you, and working in a great team is what I would not advise, but what I would ask people to be thoughtful about.
That's great. Thank you, Sharon. Anything I didn't get to ask you that you might want to, the question that you wanted to answer?
I think it's been a great conversation. I got quite excited.
Yeah, me too. It's been such an enormous pleasure. I knew it would be, but it's just been wonderful to have the conversation. And for me, having been born and raised in London, as I've mentioned before, it's also hugely relatable. I feel like it's been really nice following your story and thinking about some of the parallels that we share. But most of all, thank you and good luck. I know it's really, it's difficult for everyone right now, but running a retailer, yeah, you've taken on a very special kind of challenge, and I really wish you every success with that for all of us. So.
And everybody look after your well-being. It's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
So it's been great to meet you. Thank you so much. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. Hope to see you again soon.
See you soon. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.